Hello, everybody. So, not long ago, the Super Mario Galaxy movie came out, and instantly my feed was immersed in the music from this movie, and Brian Tyler's score, and the music for the original video game. And I had never actually played the original game, so I went and checked out a lot of this music, and it is so good. So I thought that it would be really interesting to write a piece that is modeled after one of the songs from the original Super Mario Galaxy score, and then use that piece to kind of break down the different elements of what makes the Super Mario Galaxy score as beautiful as it is. So I wrote a cue, modeled it after, of course, the Gusty Gardens theme, and let's take a listen to that piece, and then we'll break down the different elements to learn how music like this is made and what makes it sound the way it does. The intro of this piece starts off with something that I found to be very common in a lot of the Super Mario Galaxy songs, which is this big orchestral build-up intro. And there's this progression baked into there that is sort of signature Mario progression. And it's the flat 6, flat 7 to the 1. It sounds like this. And that's a very common way that Mario music resolves to the 1. So that's what is at the core of this big intro at the beginning. It sounds like this. And orchestration-wise, what we have going on here is the strings are just doing some fast runs. I'll give you a look. You can look at the notes here. Right down there. Again, we're in the key of C major. We're going from A flat major, B flat major to C. And so the runs are kind of helping lead us to where we're going. Basses and cellos are down here supporting the harmony. And brass is very similar to that. There's low brass down here, which is doing basically what the cellos and basses were doing. That's tuba and trombones that are doing that. Trumpets are ascending, and then they'll have a little staccato pattern here that jumps in to kind of bring us to the resolution. And then French horns are being very simple here. This is just the intro part. Again, just providing more context for what's going on in the harmony. Woodwinds are doubling the strings, pretty much. Just flutes are doubling that runs. Piccolos doubling that run. Percussion, pretty simple, big timpani hits. And then a few harp glissandos. So let's listen again to the second part of this intro, and then we'll break it down piece by piece. Very simple here. We are just prepping ourselves for what the melody is going to sound like, what's going to be behind the melody. And so these celli are providing the main drive. They have eighth notes and thirds. Violas are doubling that on the top note. Violins and basses are providing the accent, that one on-beat, one off-beat note. Again, that's prepping for what's going to be happening in the melody rhythmically. And we're just establishing tempo. We're establishing harmony. The main harmony of the melody is going to be C major to D major. It's a Lydian scale type of harmony, very common in floating or heroic sort of music, which Gusty Gardens definitely is. It uses a little bit of Lydian, Mixolydian type of scale to create the sound that makes Gusty Gardens. Piano is down here. It's providing accents on the same notes that the basses and the violins are. Bassoons, and bass clarinets are doubling the basses as well, again, establishing that accents. And then the French horns this part right here, this ascending kind of chord pattern is prepping us. We're leading somewhere, something's going to happen, which is the main theme that comes in next. So let's dive into the main theme now that the intro's out of the way, because the main theme is really the meat and potatoes of what is going to make this sound like a Mario soundtrack. It's always the theme in the Gusty Gardens that you remember, and that gives it that iconic sound. So let's take a listen, and then let's break it down. So there's two parts to this main theme. It starts off with a simple C major to D major sort of progression, and the melody's jumping in fifths to begin with, so it's... Again, that's fifths are a very heroic sort of feeling, and that ascending C major to D major also giving it heroic feelings, and then that repeats again. And the bass line is just going to keep moving up. C, D, E, F sharp. Continue to help with that ascending feeling. So that's pretty simple as long as you know, like, oh, it's a Lydian scale. It makes a ton of sense. Orchestration-wise, strings are carrying the melody all the way through. There had to be some layering in these strings. I have 3 different tracks all doing the main melody. And one of them is just a key switched patch. This is the core of what makes it. And that is the core of what is bringing the melody sound, but it's an ensemble patch. And the reason I used an ensemble patch for it is because it's a little bit fuller and it has better attack on certain notes, which for bouncy melodies with lots of movement is very necessary. And then the next part is just the first violins doing the exact same thing. There is one that is a sustained patch and one that is a staccato patch, kind of helping give it more attack onto those notes. And then the melody is doubled lower down in the oboes and the flutes and the piccolos, all doubling the melody, giving it a very nice rounded sound. So that's the core of what's driving the melody along in this piece. Everything else is really just supporting. The cello and the violas are continuing with that drive. Second violins have joined in to expand the harmony a little bit. Basses staying on that accent. Bass clarinets and bassoons also staying with that accent. And same with the piano, staying on those accents. But the second part here is really where it gets interesting and starts to break off. And so there's a very common theme in Mario music where the chord progression moves in steps, whole steps or half steps. But it's just sort of a chromatic kind of progression or whole tone sort of progression. And that's what happens in the second part of this theme. It's going to move from F sharp minor, E major, D major, A. And that is with the melody just sticking on the thirds of all of those chords. The backing does change a little bit. If we look at these pieces, I went from short notes and everything to a few long notes just to kind of separate the A and B parts of the theme, give it more variation into it. And the last part that's really making this kind of feel like Mario is the counter melodies that's happening. So in the counter melodies, we can hear it in the trombones here if we take a look. Between each main theme, bum. So those in between the spaces of each note, and that's doubled on the glockenspiel and on the vibraphone and clarinets as well. It's filling that empty space in between. So you take a listen, you hear the main theme, and then you'll hear a response to it. It sounds like... And then the final section of this track is where everything really breaks open and the melody gets its full time to shine. It does vary a little bit in harmony at the end. It's not exactly a repeat of what just happened before, but a lot of the stuff is the same. So I'm just going to talk about what elements I added in here and what slight changes were made. So first off, percussion-wise, there are now piatti crash cymbals that are coming in, and a tambourine is coming in, and it gets breaking up the high end of things a little bit more, adding a little bit more drive to what's going on. We still have oboes doing the same thing on the melody. We still have the first violins, but they did move an octave up from what they were before. If you take a look, this is the first iteration of the melody, and that's where the second iteration of the melody sits. That's a very common thing to do to try and break things open a little bit more in the orchestration. And we're also adding more brass. Brass is now joining the melody here, now particularly the trumpets. And then the French horns are going to also start adding the drive. Before they were just on the accents. Now we're over here and they're going to hit eighth notes. So that is helping. All those aspects are helping break things open. Everything else is really sitting in a lot of the same registers. We're just adding the brass. We're bringing the strings an octave up. We're adding a couple of percussive elements. And sometimes that is all that is needed. That's one thing that I love about the Super Mario Galaxy original scores, is that a lot of it's very simple and it relies heavily on melody and harmony to give it the feeling that it has. Not so much big orchestration or anything. So orchestration is very simple. Let's talk about real quick what's different on this last part versus the first original section, B section of the melody. So originally the B section of the melody, like I said, it goes F sharp, E major, D major, A major. But the second part of it is it's going to end from the second bum, bum, and up a little bit on that A, and then it's going to do the same thing, but we're going to be a major third up from where we were. So we're going to go A minor, G major, F major, C major over E. So we're not quite resolving all the way yet. So again, very similar but different chord structure. Everything's more intense here. Those notes, again, they're a third higher than what they were before, and it's adding more intensity. It's breaking it open, a bit of variation to everything. And then I just want to talk about real quick the progression that helps lead us into the second part of this, and then we'll cover how this all closes out. So the first time we do that, and then we're going to use that chromatic stepping in the chords again. We're going to move from A major to B flat. Just like that. And then this automatically feels very tense and it moves very nicely, chromatic mediant, to G major, which just so happens to be the 5 chord of C. So moving from that B flat major, G major helps us set up to go right back into the main melody again. And then the thing differently at the end of the second iteration is that instead of trying to set us up to move somewhere again, we want to resolve it. So we're using that same progression I talked about earlier, flat 6, flat 7, 1 at the end of this progression. You can take a listen to it. Get it? It happens fast, but it's flat 6, flat 7 to the 1. So in conclusion, I think that what makes Mario music sound like Mario music sits far more, again, in the harmony and the theme than it does in any form of the orchestration. So a few tricks to look at to make a harmony and theme that sound like Mario are to be using that flat 6, flat 7, 1 progression, great way to resolve. Removing chords in half steps or whole steps. Basically just want to keep the harmony moving. It never wants to sit still for long. And using slight ascensions in the bass line where things keep moving upward is a great way to be doing that as well. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed the song. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite Mario soundtrack is, and any other tips and tricks you think might be useful in writing this style of music. Thank you so much for watching. God bless. I hope to see you in the next one.